What's up guys, my name is Zero Heroes and welcome back to more Gatesville, and we are on the last faction of reviewing the Late War Infantry squads, and this time, as you know, the last major big faction, which is America. So if you'd like to stay tuned for more content like this, make sure you subscribe, hit that like button, and we are trying to get to 3k before the end of the year. If we can do that, that would be amazing. But if you haven't checked out the other factions that I've done review on, such as the Finnish, the Soviets, and the Germans, then make sure you go check those out in the description down below, as I give a full rundown on everything units-wise you need to know about those factions. So, with the Americans, let's first talk about the research stream. Now, this is a very, very bizarre one. So, you start off with, of course, sliding along because of how big it is. And you start off with this infantry right here. I think you start off with 2 infantry actually. But the way you actually have to progress is that you can see this massive line going all the way up here. So you have to call in stage 4 to get the BZ, to get the bazooka guy, and then go all the way down to get the 101st AD rifle squad. So because you can't just get them from the rifle squad. So this is a really bizarre and really kind of stupid system that they've brought in. So if you want to progress further to get more units, you have to just get the 4th stage in for the sector to carry on the units, which I think is really bizarre but makes sense because it is a late war, you know, campaign and late war units. You have to kind of go through the research tree. So I kind of guess it makes sense, but at the same time, I think this is absolutely a bizarre system. As you know, with the amount of scrolling you have to do, there is a tons of units. So without further ado, let's just get straight into it. So by the way, these are the units that I've recognized that are new, and if you see something that is new that I haven't seen, make sure you pop it in the comments down below, or let me know so far what has been your favorite faction to play with the late units. Let me know. Let's first start of all with the Cavalry Recon Team M1919. So we have all sorts of different cavalry units, but we're starting off with this one, which comes with 4 infantry, and it comes with a little jeep that does carry a 32 cal. And with these infantry, of course, they are recon, so they're not going to have amazing hit points, but they do have good stand with 225, and their hit points being 150 with terrible regeneration and really, really good stamina. Not the best, but definitely up there. The guns that they're carrying looks like a Thompson. Yep, your M4A1 Thompson, I think, actually, and this guy carries a carbine. Actually, 2 of them carries a carbine, while the third one just carries the Thompson. But as you know, because they're on a scout car, they'll be spun in a scout car. One of them will be in the machine gunner, and there'll be 1 driver and 1 passenger. So not a bad start. I think this is probably a really basic, and also they're they're not that cheap with being 105 manpower, but it does cost really cheap as in the men, you know, for space wise, putting in echelon space. So it does only cost you 5 men, but 105 I would still think is really expensive. I would have put that down to maybe about 80 manpower, just because I think it is quite expensive. Moving on to the next one, which is your Cavalry Recon Team M2HB. So these guys cost a wee bit more men, so 7 men, but they do cost more, which is 125 manpower. Now these guys do now come with a bigger gun. They come with a 50 cal on the Jeep instead of your 30 cal. With the infantry, I guess it's the same, you know, one of them carrying a Thompson and 2 of them carrying the carbines, and their health is actually, I think it's actually slightly better with 150 instead of 125. Regeneration being terrible, but the stamina being great at 225 and 3.0 regeneration. Again, I still think this is really expensive. The reason it is more expensive is because it does have a bigger gun on the Jeep with a 50 cal, so you're able to deal enemy units quicker and suppress them a lot quicker. The next one we're moving on to is the Cavalry Platoon HQ. Now these guys, you can tell that it's a lot bigger armored car here. You can see your driver is a lot better protected, and it does carry a 50 cal, the same as that other one there, but also it does carry a 30 cal at the back, so it is able to protect itself if it gets flanked as well. So nice wee thing there, although the sides are not protected, as it does probably only have like a 45-degree angle turning left and right with those machine guns. But as you can see, you actually get a lot more more infantry. I believe you get 6 of them. Yep, you get 6 of them with their standard gun carrying an M1 carbine. A few of them carrying it looks like a M1 Grand, that looks like as well. Yep, the M1 Grand, and the rest of them carrying the same. Their hit points are terrible, being at 150. That regeneration should be a lot higher considering their hit points are very low, and they're very much easily now able to get killed because the regeneration of getting their hit points is so bad. The stamina is good at 225 with the regeneration being at 3.0. So not so much of a disappointment, although I do think our regeneration could be higher with the kind of lower hit points that they have. And these guys are costing a wee bit higher at 215 manpower, so it is a considerably a lot higher, but I do think it's worth it because your men are a lot better protected within this armored vehicle, and you do have 2 machine guns, what, 50 cal at the front, 30 cal at the back, and then you do have more infantry. So I do think it's actually more worth it. I think it is worth it more than the other 2, and it is 7 men, so it doesn't take up a lot of space in your echelon area. Moving on to our first kind of proper, I guess, infantry squad, which is the first AD recon squad. So we're kind of sticking with the recon kind of area. These guys come with kind of your standard Jeep, which is really weird considering there's no kind of like armored car where it comes with a machine gun. It's just like your standard Jeep, which is really bad because it's very vulnerable to getting blown up by like an AT gun that maybe fires HE, or vulnerable to a bazooka guy or AT guy. You can see that these guys kind of carry your standard guns with your Thompsons and your carbines and your Grands, M1 Grand, but the hit points again very disappointing at 150, with your regeneration as well being awful. But I just doesn't really make sense of the Jeep. I just think this is kind of something that Caseville just added on because they couldn't think of anything else to give these guys. But I don't really see what's special about these guys besides that, you know, they just come with a Jeep. To be honest, that's really it. And these guys cost 60 men, so they are really cheap. These are actually cheapest that we will see, but actually there is cheaper ones which will go later in the video. But I don't think it's really worth it just for 60 men, just for a couple of infantry. I think these are such a waste of a unit, and I think it's just such a waste of just buying them in a research tree as well. Moving on to the next one, which is the actual first proper squad, which is the first AD rifle squad. So these guys have a lot more guys, so there's no transport truck or anything, which is kind of sad because they're not able to get through the battlefield quicker, but they have a lot more of these guys, and you can see that one of them is carrying backup weapons such as a Springfield and another one, and they're carrying actually 2 Springfields with, actually I think most of them carrying the secondary weaponry, but this time we have a guy that carries an anti-tank rifle with your standard Springfield rifle, so that is really good. Now this is a M6 bazooka rocket, so could deal with your medium to lightly armored tanks, nothing probably more than that, but because there's so many of them, it's actually really, really good. If we look at their hit points and stamina, 200, which is better, again, terrible regeneration, I think that should at least be a 1.0, 1.5. The stamina, not great with 125, I think that regeneration is, I think, about level. I think it should maybe be higher at 3.5, maybe 3.2, depending on, you know, the type of map that you're on. But overall, I think these are not bad units, and the cost of these units are 14 men and 195 manpower, which is actually not too bad. I would maybe put them slightly cheaper, but because you have one guy with an AT rocket, I think that's quite a fair price to put it at. The next one, we are going back to now another squad, which is your first AT rifle squad mounted. So they're just the same, but this time it's just on a half track. And this time we have an M3 half track with, I believe, a 30 cal in the middle and lots of room to carry all your infantry, which is brilliant. You can see that there's tons of infantry. There will be a driver and a dedicated machine gunner. So that is really good for kind of supporting, for moving your infantry up along the battlefield, as well as getting to the front battle really, really well. So I do actually like that. Now these guys do cost a wee bit more in men, such as 19, and they are going to cost more with 289 manpower. That is a lot for just kind of the starting off battle. I think these guys are really expensive, but I do think it's worth it. If you are kind of worried about kind of price and all that and budget, I would go for the other one. But if you're then go for the first AD rifle squad without the mounted, but if you want to go for the mounted one, it makes more sense just to get to the battlefield quicker and get your infantry to give backup basically in a quicker way. So really expensive, but I think it's worth it. I would say it's still worth it for the price that you get for it. Moving on to the rifle squad of 1944. So these guys, compared to the normal ones, of course the weaponry will be better, with the hit points and the stamina being the same with the infantry, but the only difference is just their guns. You can see that some of them do have backup weapons, you know, such as another Springfield, and you can see that one of them does actually carry a bazooka, which again, dealing with those lightly armored vehicles, which is really handy for your kind of AT, your tank troubles, I would say. But make sure you don't get him killed because he is the only one that does carry one, so make sure you keep this guy alive at all times. The hit points of these guys, if we have a look at them, 200 base and 125 stamina. Again, very standard for your typical rifleman. I would think they'd be slightly higher considering they are kind of later in the war, but I do understand that, you know, you're trying to kind of keep it a balanced level. So overall, with these men costing 233 bad power and 17 men, I think it's quite a good standard price, although I think it is a wee bit high. I think if you're going to put it at that price, I would maybe give you another guy that has like a rocket launcher. So I would maybe reduce it to maybe about 220, 225 instead of 233. I think it's just more kind of balanced that way. Moving on to the Armoured Rifle Squad Mounted 1944. So these guys are literally the same as the Rifle Squad, but this time they are armoured. I know that doesn't really make much sense, but if you look at these guys are really packing. You can see, again, it comes with your half track, and this time it comes with a 50 cal, so the better upgraded half track. Also with the infantry carrying, one of them carrying, you know, your commander carrying the M3 grease gun, with the rest carrying your M1 Grands or your Springfields. And I believe one of them does carry an AT rifle as well, or an AT rifle, a bazooka as well, the M41 bazooka, which is again really good. So, but again, these guys will be really expensive, with them being at 328 manpower and 23 men. That is really high up in the expensive scale. If you're kind of worried about price, I would maybe go for the first AD rifle squad, but because these guys are armored, I would possibly go for these guys if you're wanting something a wee bit tougher to get through the defense, or if you are defending, then these guys will last longer in battle, with of course them being the hit points of being 200. That's really disappointing because it does say armored, so I expect them to at least be at least 250 to maybe 45. That is really disappointing. I expected these hit points to be slightly higher with their stamina. I would say that's a fair assumption because they are armored. Maybe they're slightly slower because they're carrying a lot heavier stuff on their backs and secondary weaponry. So I would say that's a fair assumption, but the hit points, that's really disappointing, and I think that should be buffed. Moving on to the next one, which is the Engineer Squad Mounted. So these guys, you can tell there's so many of these guys, and the whole point is that most of them, all of them are actually engineers, except from, you know, the half track that is carrying a 30 cal, and of course the driver, and then you also have an engineer squad leader, and then you also have an engineer assist SL, which is, I don't know what SL stands for, I might be dumb, and then you also actually have a backup rifle grenadier, which is absolutely amazing. So you do have some sort of regular infantry as well within that mix, but you have so many engineers. You can literally set up hundreds of trenches, you can set up barbed wires, tank traps, everything. This is a really good unit. They are quite standard for the hit points. Again, 200 hit points, but this time regeneration being at 2.5, which kind of makes sense because they are engineers, so they're probably more tactically trained in, you know, healing themselves or placing down things to protect themselves a lot better. With stamina being at 125, kind of your standard, and their regeneration being at 3.0. These guys are quite high in the men scale, you know, taking up a lot of space of 22 men, but the price of these guys are actually not too bad, being at 354 manpower. I said that's not bad, but that's actually really expensive. But I think for getting a whole bunch of squad of engineers, I actually do think that's worth it. Maybe not such a high price, and maybe lower it to maybe 330, maybe 325. But I understand why they're doing it, because you are getting a lot of engineers for what you get. So I would approve on this. And then of course you get the engineer squad mounted, which is different from your engineer squad. Well, the difference is, one is actually, I can't believe I didn't add in the engineer. Oh no, I did, sorry. We're about to move on to the 1944 one. So these guys, as you can see, that half track just actually look a lot better protected, as you can see here. You can see the top bit here is more protected, so your guy is better protected on that machine gun with the 50 cal at the top. And again, your infantry are going to be a lot better with the weaponry, and because they are engineers, that they are, you know, going to be better in building stuff quicker, which is really good. You do get a whole lot of different engineers. You also get an engineer rifle grenadier, you get an engineer assistant SL, you get an engineer AP miner, you get a whole lot, and you get an engineer squad leader as well. So you get a whole lot of different aspects of different engineers, which is really cool to see. But they are expensive with men, with being 24 men taking up a lot of space there. But with that, it is 379 manpower. That is so much. That is more expensive than the previous one. But because they are, you know, later on than they are, you know, in the 1944 era, they would be more expensive. So you have to understand why they're upping the price in that. Moving on to now the veteran rifle squad. Now the veteran rifle squad may seem like your standard one, but of course you never know, you know, they keep adding stuff all the time, which doesn't, you know, which you always have to keep an eye out for. So these guys got, again, 21 men. That is a lot for what you get, but because they are veteran, you know, you would expect them for their hit points and their manpower to be, sorry, their hit points and stamina to be really good. Yeah, there you go. What? That's not bad improvement. I feel like they could be slightly higher hit points of 230 hit points, with regeneration being still absolute crap of 3.0. That's terrible. Because these veterans, I think they'd be maybe better trained, so I would expect them to at least give me maybe about a 2.0 regeneration, maybe slightly higher, 2.5. But the stamina being awful at 162 and the regeneration being really good at 3.9. But why is their stamina so bad if they're veterans? This is something that I don't quite get. Why, if they're so experienced and really good, they should be really good at stamina and they should be quite strong. But the fact that they only have 230 hit points and they're 162 stamina, that's really bad and really awful. I would definitely buff that Gatesville. Not happy with that. With the armaments they get one, their commander gets the Thompson, while the rest of them gets their M1 Grand and their Springfield, with most of them having backup weapons, which is really cool. Now these guys are quite expensive, with being 257 manpower. That is quite expensive, but because you are veteran, it does make sense. And then for the veteran squad of veteran rifle squad for 1944, it is 297 manpower, so that's almost 300 manpower with 24 men, so slightly more than just your regular one. But these guys look absolutely ready for anything. Backup weapons, you can see one carries a massive M9 bazooka, which could probably deal with more of your maybe Panzer IVs, maybe Stug tanks, slightly higher there, so really impressive. And I do think they're probably worth their price, maybe slightly lower at 280, but not too much. But I still think that's a really good buy over the first one. Now we're moving on to the second AD rifle squad mounted 1944. So we had the first AD, now we're moving on to the second AD. You can tell the difference automatically with the half track. You can see they got that kind of protection ring around the guy on the machine gun, on the 50 cal. On these guys look absolutely stacked to the brim. If we have a look at them, their hit points are massive buff of 300. The regeneration be terrible, but I think that's acceptable now because their hit points are so high. Their stamina being really good as well, being at 240, and their regeneration amazing at 5.4. Really good, considering they look like they are carrying only kind of like one weapons and they're very light. I'm very happy that this is kind of the hit points of stamina they've got. Some of them carrying, you know, backup weapons as well, with one carrying the M4A1 bazooka, which can take out kind of your medium tanks as well, possibly heavy, but I wouldn't rely on that. And the cost of these guys are going to be quite expensive. 335 manpower with 27 men. That takes up a lot of space in your area here, in your recruited stage here. But I do think that worth the price. I think that is a really good price for what you get. I'm actually really happy with that. So I would really recommend actually this over the first squad. And I know the first AD squad are cheaper, but they don't have as much protection on the half track here, and they look like they're better, you know, maneuverability wise, and they have better HP. So I definitely would go for that over the first AD squad. Moving on to the next one, which is the Mountain Rifle Squad 1945. These guys cost 399 power. That's 400 manpower. That was really expensive. Let's have a look to see if they're actually worth it. You tell some of them are carrying backup weapons with their 180 guys while carrying your M9A1. So this can deal probably with now your maybe meat to heavier armor tanks. Now I would actually probably sing Tiger 1 now. Possibly at the rear, maybe not frontally, but definitely rear or the side of a Tiger 1, which hopefully will be able to take it out. But if you're getting that, I would say get another 80 guy for the squad. It is really expensive, and I expect Gatesville to at least put another guy for having another bazooka. I don't think that this squad is worth it if you're only having one guy that has an AT squad. But if we look at their hit points of stamina, I'm kind of disappointed. 300. I think they could have buffed that higher to maybe about 350, 320. Their stamina, again, slightly higher, maybe buff it to 220. I just think because of how pro these guys are, and how pro, I say pro like they're gamers, this is war, of how, you know, advanced these guys are, then I would expect their stamina and hit points to be slightly higher, and their regeneration for the hit points of stamina is terrible. I think the stamina could have been higher, at least at 5.9, and the regeneration being up there at least at 2.0. I really think this is quite a disappointing squad, to be fair, and I really don't think this is worth it. But if you really are, you can see, but it does come with a sniper, you can see, which is really cool. It comes with, I believe this is a Springfield, but just with a scope, and you have different ones that comes, some of them do come with an automatic rifleman, so you can see that this guy is carrying an M19 18A2 bar, so it looks like, I believe 2 of these guys are carrying machine gunners, so that is kind of good. So you do get a mix of rifle grenadiers, you know, AT infantry as well, but this guy just carries the ammo for it, which is actually quite cool, as well as this guy, the official guy carrying the AT, does have ammo as well. A good mix of kind of everything, which I really do like. So I still don't think this is worth it, but the fact that you do get a good mix of different infantry, possibly say it's maybe slightly worth it. Moving next on to the Mountain Pioneer Squad 1945. So if we look at these guys, you can see one is already carrying the bazooka, the M9A1, again dealing with good heavy tanks, but they're not as many as, you know, the first one, the Mountain Rifle Squad. They are considerably cheaper, 155 manpower with 14 men, which is really good, but because no, they're not as many of them, you are maybe going to get slightly outnumbered by more veteran units in the German squad. But if we look at the guns they carry, they can see they carry M1 carbines, which is your more modern weapons at the time. Actually, I believe all of them do carry them, and I believe all of them actually do carry M1 carbines. There's no argument against that. If we look at their hit points, again, 300 HP, which I think is really good, and 2.0 rate generation, I think is quite decent. I'm quite happy about that. The stamina, 200. I think it could be slightly higher, but then again, I'm not arguing. And the regeneration being at 4.5. Again, buff that up to maybe about 5.0. I think that'd be more suitable, or 4.9. I think that'd be more suitable. But I do think this is actually more worth it over the Mounted Rifle Squad of 1945. I know they're both the same year, but if you're going for budget wise, go for this squad. But if you don't care about budget and you want to just go balls in, then go for the Mounted Rifle Squad. Absolutely worth it. So this is a 101st Glider Squad 1944. So these guys are absolutely stacked. They really are. You can tell that you've got guys with automatic riflemen, which they do carry that, again, that same machine gun as the other group. You've got an AR assistant. I don't know what AR stands for. If someone could let me know, that'd be really good. And let me know. You've got an AR ammo bearer, which is probably the guy who carries the ammo for the normal AR. And you have also, you've got 2 rifle grenadiers as well. Really, really useful. You've got just your standard rifleman, and then you've got your one that actually, that one already said. So yeah, these guys carries your M1 Grand, so not that great. I think with what you get 290 manpower, really expensive for only carrying guys that have M1 Grands. I think that's really disappointing. If we look at their hit points and stamina, 300, 200, really basic. This is really expensive squad. I really don't think this squad is worth it. I think the hit points is okay. I think it's quite good. But I think the stamina, it should be slightly higher. I really don't think these guys are worth it at 290 manpower. I really think it's just such a waste as well. Moving on to now the rest of the squad. So you have the 82nd Glider Squad 1944, the 82nd Glider Pioneer Squad 1944, the 82nd Glider Squad, and then we have the 82nd Glider Pioneer Squad. So you can see we have the two regular ones, and then you have the one from 1944. If we're comparing the 82nd Glider Squad to the 1944 version, you can see that the regular squad costs 238 manpower, and the 1944 version is actually cheaper at 297 manpower. They're both cost the same amount of men at 24. And if we have a look at the hit points and the stamina, you can see that they will be the same at 300 and 240, which is really good. And I like that increase of stamina, considering now that they are kind of slightly more veteran, and the regeneration 5.4, so I really do like that. Of course, the weapons will be slightly different. You know, the 1944 versions do carry M1 Grands, whereas the regular squad do carry, I think, again, also M1 Grands. So if I was comparing between the two, I would actually get the 1944 version. They seem to be right, same amount of men. They both will be carrying RPGs and rockets, but I don't know why the 1944 version is more expensive than just the regular one. Someone could let me know in the comments down below why that is, but I don't see the difference. Now, if we're comparing the 82nd Glider Squad, Glider Pioneer Squad to the 1944 version, now these guys, the 1944 version costs 193 manpower with 16 men, so a lot cheaper than just a regular squad. And then the regular Pioneer Squad does cost 198 manpower with 16 men. So the 16 men are still the same, but it's actually not as big a gap as the the normal regular squad. So it's only what, 4 or 5 manpower in it. Again, I'm not good at math, but you can see that the 1944 version is actually considerably cheaper. If we look at these guys, again, their hit points are decent, and their regeneration at 2.0 is quite good, with stamina being brilliant at 240, or quite good at 240, and a regeneration being really good at 5.4. I'm very happy at that. With the armament they carry, again, M1 Grands, kind of disappointing. I expect them to be carrying, carbines, but it might not be historically accurate, and I'm not really good with historical bullshit and all that. Anyway, moving on to the next unit. If I'll choose between, again, the two, I'll go for the 1944 version. I just do think it's cheaper, and you're better off version with that. Next, we're going to be moving on to the Ranger section. So you have 3 different Ranger squads. So you have the Ranger Special Weapons section 1944, you have the Ranger Assault section 1944, and then you have the Ranger Assault section MG 1944. So 3 different ones. They're all different. So the Ranger Assault section and the Ranger Assault section MG is just the same, except one squad has an MG. You can see right here, this guy has an this squad has an MG, the other one doesn't. The armaments, the weapons, the stamina, the hit points will all be the same, but the good thing is that they get a massive increase of hit points compared to those squads of 375, and their stamina being right up there at 300, with the stamina regeneration being at 7.5, so that's a massive upgrade. Really, really good. Disappointing thing of their guns, I think they should be given carbines, considering they're a lot more updated. But again, if we look at the price of these guys, they are quite expensive, with the Ranger Assault Squad in 1944 being at 254 manpower at 22 men, and the one with the MG just costs 296, so it's a lot more expensive than the MG, which does make sense, and I'm quite happy. I think that's quite a realistic price, to be fair. Again, same amount of manpower, same amount of men, which is really good. And if I was choosing between the two, if you're going for a more defensive one, go for the MG one, but if you're going for more an assault one, go for the cheaper one. But then if we look at just the special weapons section, these guys are a lot different. These guys are carrying an M9A1 bazooka anti-tank one, And then we've got another guy carrying another bazooka. And then we actually have a mortar here, the 60mm mortar. These guys are looking absolutely cracked and really good. Hit points being 375, right up there. Regeneration, not that, of course, being awful, but the stamina being right up there, 7.5 again, and stamina being 300. The regeneration, sorry. And these guys do cost 252, which is, I think, is actually brilliant. Considering you get a mortar and 2 guys that carry AT, I think this has to be one of the best units that here so far. Of course, you get 2 of them. You get 2 crew for the mortar here, which are really good. But then you're kind of left with really only 2 or 3 guys who are just normal riflemen. So there is a wee bit of a weakness there. Consider you can't really protect your mortar with like 2 or 3 guys, and one of them being a main AT guy. I think you're not defensively protecting your mortar well. But overall, I think this is the best unit so far. Going on to one of the more special units now. This is called the First Special Combat Section. Now these guys are all freaking, again, I will say they're stacked because they are. You see that most of them are unfortunately carrying your M1 Grand. Not that great. But I really don't know what makes them special. Of course, you get the guy carrying the M1, the M4A1, the M1A1 rocket, and a couple of them carrying backup weapons. But if anyone could let me know what's special about these guys, you know, there is, oh sorry, if you look here, we actually have 2 mechanics we have for fixing tanks, so that's actually really good. 1 operator, 1 radio operator, 1 medic. We have 3 demolition infantry, and you have the squad leader. So never mind, I say what's so special about them. That's why they're special, because you have 2 grenadier units, 2 mechanics, 1 medic, 1 radio operator, and 3 demolition guys. That is absolutely insane. You're able to do so much, and I would maybe use these guys as a more defensive mission instead of an offensive, but you can still use them for both. But I think these guys are great. Now, these guys are expensive. Actually, sorry, they're not that expensive, with being 212 manpower with 12 men. I think these guys are great. Again, on top with the other squad that I just said are really good. I think you have such a good combination of different units that, you know, you're able to kind of do everything with them. So again, top of my list for this squad. So I'm now moving on to the 101st Airborne Engineer Squad, 1944. So these guys are really good because you actually get a guy who's a flamethrower. Look at him. He's wearing freaking Dr. Evil sunglasses. Have you seen his sunglasses? I mean, look at him. He's wearing evil sunglasses. He looks like a villain. I don't know why. But then you have this guy carrying your M41 bazooka. So you can still deal with tanks with a flamer and a bazooka. Absolutely amazing. Really, really good. The weaponry of these guys, not that great. Again, carrying their M1 Grands. Not that good. With some of them, actually, I did see one guy carrying a Springfield there. But if we look at the hit points on some of these guys, 375, really good with an impressive 1.5 regeneration, considering that regeneration of hit points is so low on most of these units. I think this is quite good. With the stamina being pretty good at 300 and regeneration being amazing at 7.5. Are these guys worth it? Well, 388 manpower is really expensive, really up there with 24 men. That takes up a lot of your space, considering you may not have a lot of space to play with because you have so many other infantry units to play along with. I think these guys are absolutely stacked. If you want to deal with tanks and infantry, again, use this squad for defensive missions. I would never actually use it for offensive, just because I think that you are better for building like trenches and building so much more, considering all of them are engineers. You want to use them for defense only. Moving on, next one to the 101st Airborne Squad, 1944. These guys are different from your engineer squad, you know, except, you know, they're just not engineers. That's really it. You can see they are better equipped, with 2 of them carrying Thompsons and a few of them carrying, you know, your Springfields, as well as one of them carrying your M9 bazooka, which the other squad already had, but it's still really good. These guys are considerably cheaper. Actually, sorry, the engineer squad was 245. These guys cost 388 manpower. Sorry, I got that completely wrong. So it's the other way around. And the engineer squad actually costs cheaper at 18 men, whereas the regular squad, this one here, does cost 24 men. So if you're kind of maybe looking for a more defensive one, go for the engineers. But if you are going for a more offensive one, go just for the regular airborne squad. They are more expensive with cost more men, but I think it is worth it. Moving on now to the 82nd Airborne or 82nd squad. So you got the 82nd Airborne Engineer Squad, the 82nd Airborne Squad, and the 82nd Airborne Demolition Squad 1944. So what's the difference between them all? Well, let's have a look. The 82nd Airborne Engineer Squad, which is the middle one here, these guys are, I guess, again, all the engineers carrying their flamer. You got a guy who's a flamethrower again with the evil glasses looking like Dr. Octopus, Dr. Frickin', you know, the Spider-Man evil guy. I forgot his name. Someone has to let me know in the comments. But yeah, with his glasses. And then, but these guys are actually relatively cheap with 318 and 20 men. I don't think that's considerably bad, considering that also one of them does carry a rocket launcher as well, an RPG. Really, really good. 20 men, I think that's quite expensive on the high end, but I do think it is worth it. Next one, looking at the 82nd Airborne Squad 1944. These are just your regular squads. Absolutely stacked. There's a lot of them, with one carrying your, again, your bazooka. And there's actually, you get different types of units. So you have a sniper in the squad, you have an MG operator with an AR assistant, you get an automatic rifleman who comes with an assistant as well. That's what AR stands for. And you have an AT infantry who comes with an assistant as well, with 2 rifle grenadiers and a squad leader. It's also having an MG operator and assistant, as well as an ammo bearer. So there's so many options for the squads, very diverse. I really like it. And their hit points, the stamina is improved. Well, especially their stamina is improved to 360, with their regeneration being at 8.6, which is incredible, the highest I've seen so far. So I'm really happy with that. With the price being at 478, that's actually really expensive. That is the highest expensive squad I've seen so far. 478 manpower with 24 men. That is really, really high, but I think with what you get, I think it is worth it. Although they could have maybe reduced it down to 450, 425 manpower, because that is really expensive. Next, moving on to the Airborne, 82nd Airborne Demolition Section 1944. These guys are all Demolition Squad. You get one guy who's an SL. Again, I don't know what SL stands for. You got an SMG infantry, you got another assistant SL, and you also have a demolition officer who can definitely make absolutely quick work of getting rid of or putting down mines, or basically just blowing just shit up. So I really like it. And you also have 180 guy with an assistant as well. Brilliant, brilliant. I think there's so much, again, very good range, not as much variety as the other group, but do I think it's worth it at 329 manpower? Not really. I think you're, again, your Airborne Engineer Squad is probably better, but if you want to kind of blow up shit, then your Demolition Squad is definitely worth it. Now moving on to the last couple, which is your Bazooka team. So these guys are dirt cheap. These guys are looking at 3 manpower. Well, the 2 of them cost the 3 men, sorry, which is really cheap considering there's only 2 of them. The difference is that you've got the M9 Bazooka AT team, and you've got the M9A1 Bazooka team. I presume one could just deal with tanks better than others. I think the M9A1 is probably better than the M9. Let me know in the comments down below. Again, I'm not great with guns, but what I can tell is that you've got the M18 and recoilless rifle squad. These guys are stat. This is an M18 and it looks like it's got a scope in as well. This thing could deal with Tiger 2s, Jag Tigers, Tiger tanks, possibly even slightly, you know, even KV2s if you're up against the Soviets in an unrealistic battle. But this thing looks absolutely amazing. The biggest and best RPG I think the Americans have to offer. Also having a gunner as well as the assistant, as well as a squad leader, and you'll have 2 ammo bearers that do carry the ammo for this thing. So you have tons of ammo for this gun, which is absolutely amazing. I think it's very cheap with 7 men. But if we look at the price of them, they are kind of expensive with 116 men, but I think with what you get, it's absolutely worth it. And with the other 2 squads, they do cost 93 men for the M9A1 and 88 manpower for the from the N9. If you are wanting to maybe have a cheap version with, you know, with only 2-1, with having, you know, 2 infantry, I would go with the M9A1 just because it is a better bazooka, RPG, whatever you call it, and I think overall this is a better gun. So there you go, guys. That is the American Late War Infantry faction done. Finished. That is all the factions covered, and if you want to see the other faction reviews that I've done for this, make sure you go click in the link down below where it is all there for you. But other than that, guys, that is it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and if you want to see the Finnish one, which is a really underrated but brilliant squad, then click on the left hand screen right now where you can see the full review of that. But other than that, thank you so much for watching, and Ostfront, and I will see you in the next video. See you later, and goodbye.